Begin the meeting.
All right, you're live. Take it away.
All right. Let's call to order the Salem Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting for May 12th, 2022. We'll go right into roll call. I am the acting chair, Dylan McDowell, and go down the list. Alan Alexander, currently not present. Woody Dukes.
Here.
Dave Friedenmacher, Maker.
Here.
Rick Hartwig.
Here.
Al Holland.
Here.
Joan Lloyd is not with us yet. And Keith Norris.
Here.
All right, and I'm sure you all have noticed we're missing a couple of city staffers today. Tony wasn't able to join us tonight, and neither is Mylan. So we're missing a few of our crew, but appreciate Rob. I know you're going to be stepping in for some of that as well. So thank you for being here. Tonight we have two presentations, but first we have an election. So just to explain how this process is going to work, right now the chair role is up. I said last time, and I think I will be putting my name to that as transparency. So if I were to be selected, there would be then an election for vice chair. Otherwise, it would just be the chair role tonight. So just noting that. And in terms of process, we have the option to do a roll call vote if everyone is comfortable with that. The alternative would be a written vote via chat, but that would still be added into the public record. So for simplicity, it would be easier just to do a roll call vote, even if there is a contested election. Are there any objections to doing roll call for our voting system? Okay. Perfect.
Do we need a motion?
I don't. First, we can just take nominations. I think people can nominate if would anyone like to nominate themselves or nominate someone else to serve as the role of chair. Again, I guess in fairness, and as I just said, I would like to nominate myself to be considered, but would others like to be nominated as well? Okay. Well, in that case, then I think a motion and a roll call would be warranted. So Al, would you like to do that?
Move to accept Dylan McDowell as chair.
Second.
Seconded by Woody. Well, thank you. We'll just do a quick roll call. Woody.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Dave.
Aye.
Rick.
Aye.
Al.
Aye.
And Keith.
Aye.
Well, thank you all. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited for us to hopefully get back in person, and this is going to be a lot of fun stuff this year. So that means we need a vice chair. Who would like to nominate themselves to fill that role this year?
I nominate Keith.
I would second that nomination. Are there any other?
I'll accept it.
Oh. Throwing out the nomination, Rick. It hit the crack. We didn't know which way it was going to go, but all right. Well, I'm not hearing any others, so we'll do a quick roll call. Woody Dukes.
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
Rick.
Aye.
Al.
Yes, Al. Aye.
Yep. And Keith. You.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. So Keith, welcome to the vice chair role.
Congratulations and thank you both. This is good.
Thanks, guys.
We appreciate it. This is great. Well, it's been a pleasure. And like I said, I'm really excited for more things this year. Hopefully it's more in person as well. Let's move into our public comment period then. We did have one piece of public comment sent in from Mark Wigg, who had joined us last time. I'm just going to pull that up again.
Chair McDowell, I'm looking at the agenda. We need to
thank you.
approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. I got ahead of myself there. Let us approve the minutes. Here I am taking over the chair and already fumbling the agenda. Let us please review the minutes from last time. And would anyone like to make corrections or adjustments to the minutes?
I have one.
Okay.
And maybe it's been corrected, but I sent it to Tony. That I wasn't sure if the public works director was in the meeting or not. They weren't listed as a staff person, but there was comments saying that they were saying something.
That is a great meeting, great note. We had Robert Chandler as the Assistant Public Works Director. And so I think
Right, that's who I meant. Yeah.
so you're saying that it just said Public Works Director instead of Assistant?
No, he wasn't listed as a staff person present, but then it looked like he was speaking, but I wasn't sure if somebody was repeating, because I wasn't there. I don't know if somebody was repeating his words or if he was actually there.
And Dave, you're talking at the very top of the minutes where it says staff present, that list, adding his name there. Dr.
Right, his
Chandler.
name wasn't there. So
Right.
I wasn't sure if he was really there or not.
That makes sense.
He was, for the record.
So you're
Okay.
very good catch. So we should add that. Dave, I feel like you always have an eagle eye for the agenda or for the minutes. I'm always impressed with the things you catch. So thank you for.
Well, because I wasn't there, it's stuck in my mind because I'm like, was he there or not? Was somebody just saying what he said, or did he really say that?
Any other comments that folks would make about the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes with the change.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are adopted. Now let us move on to public comment. So as I mentioned, we did have one piece of public comment that was submitted. I will open it up if folks would like to make any discussion points about that. I was Mark Wig, re-bond projects. Okay. And we'll.
Dylan, I don't know. My thought as I was reading through it, kind of went beyond Mark's particular comment, but thinking about his remarks here about undeveloped parks, and it got me thinking about what is the strategy and the prioritization behind the city's plans for implementing our master park plans for our individual parks. And I know that's been brought up before, I think, in some of our discussions, but I think it could be really beneficial for this body to be more aware of and involved with that process, right? And so knowing kind of where the master plans for park development stand, what the priority is for those, where funds are being pursued, and being updated on that on a more regular basis, and have an opportunity for some input on that. And so that's kind of at least where I saw Mark's comment getting to is we have a lot of undeveloped parks. What are the efforts being put forth here? And there's a couple of examples just in this packet, right, of kind of the playground replacement at Wallace Marine. I don't know that I recall that being something that was brought forward as on the plans, and I could be mistaken on that. But I think there's a number of things in here just giving our board and our community opportunity here a more comprehensive look at the strategic approach being taken by the city staff toward parks development and implementing our development plans.
It's a really good.
Rob hopped on if he has thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you. Rob Remnack, Park Planner. I think that's a really good intro to one of tonight's presentations. We have Tammy Stars with the engineering division, and she's going to be giving a presentation about the CIP. And I think a lot of your questions may begin to be answered this evening. And if you have additional questions, we can certainly follow up.
Perfect, appreciate that. And I think just having that be part of our annual or maybe semi-annual look at what is the strategic look at the next year for implementing those plans. And I think that could help us as Parks Advisory Board members be helpful to the city in terms of identifying and seeking grant opportunities and being able to speak more eloquently in support of some grant opportunities to implement those master plans. So.
It's a really good point, Keith. And I know at one point in the past, there was a list shared with us that had future bond projects. I want to say it was through 2023 or not bonds, sorry. It might've been CIP, but it was some park development projects. And so updating those lists would be great. And I think to Keith's point, I had a question recently from somebody about Eagles View Park and when that was going to be developed, which is near me. And there's been so many recent master plans with Gear and Battle Creek and everything else. And I think just having a sense for our own timeline when community members ask us, well, we approved this master plan, how far out is that? How many are what's coming up soon would be really good. So great point, Keith. And we'll see what we get out of the CIP presentation, but maybe we can follow up on that, especially at the later part of the meeting. I will just note, I was going to put this link to Mark's comments. If folks have not seen it already, the city is updated. Let me put this chat in here. This is on the city's bond website. There's a list, if you scroll down, into the recommendations that are going to the council work session on Monday. And there are some park upgrades in there. I know this was mentioned in our staff report as well, but just as some reading for everybody to know what some of the projects are that are being considered. I will also say it's amazing how fast $300 million goes when you look at the project list. Okay, I see we have, well, I don't see any members of the public now, but there's no other public comment, I don't believe.
So am I clear in understanding that Mark Wigg's letter to Tony about developing trails is being addressed?
I think,
are we providing for a way for him to either build trails or to have trails built in undeveloped parks that he's offering to do, and seeks to be reassured that walking in the public parks that we own is going to remain possible and will become more possible if more trails could be built?
that is
Seems like that's what he wants.
Yeah. Rob, I see you're coming on.
Yeah, so the city has our comprehensive park system master plan, and it includes a policy regarding we call interim use or pre-development of our parks. It's exactly to get at kind of this point that sometimes we don't have the funds to develop a park, so we have what can we do in the interim to provide some public use and enjoyment. We have that as a policy. We do use that, and Jennifer could jump in or talk about later how we have lots of those kind of projects going on in the city, particularly neighborhood parks. Some of the sites discussed in the public comment are larger properties on the edge of town that we don't have the resources to maintain. And so it becomes a maintenance challenge essentially for us. We want to take advantage of the opportunity to acquire those properties, but we can't necessarily maintain them as parks. So it's a little bit of a balancing act. And that actually gets at kind of the larger point about prioritizing projects. There isn't an infinite amount of operating funds. So we have to be able to strategic in a sense with developing parks to make sure we can maintain them.
I understand all that, but that's not addressing what he's offering or wanting to do. It sounds like he wants to be able to, he's offering to build the trails in the parks for free, but it would mean, would that impose a maintenance obligation that is burdensome?
This is Jennifer. Yes, it does, because when you start, and as Rob mentioned, we do this routinely when we're able to do for interim use, but it is an impactful even with the soft trail that's put in there, because you have to replenish that material on an ongoing basis, and those are all funds that come out of parks operations. So depending on the size of the trail and all of that relates to the impact. And so typically when folks put trails in, the next step is they then request, it doesn't really, under normal circumstances, kind of stop at trails. They want, benches for respite along the trails, especially if it's a longer trail. They want garbage cans, mutt mitts, because they want to take their dog on their walk with them. So it can snowball really easily, which are all interim use types of amenities and that we put in parks. So Rob's right. We try to balance where those trails are, what we can actually maintain in a reasonable manner, and be able to afford to do and have staff to be able to do that. So.
And I'll just add, it can really snowball in certain places quite quickly to be quite complex, even though it seems pretty simple. So cultural resources are located throughout the city, and we have a responsibility to make sure we're avoiding impacts to them. And so on a normal park development, we have a well-established process to make sure we have clearance from the city's historic preservation officer to do ground disturbing activity. And that gets more complicated on little projects. It doesn't get cost effective. Similar to that would be ADA. So, you know, going around and putting in chip trails sounds great, but the city has an obligation under ADA to make sure that we're providing accessible facilities. So it can get out of hand pretty quickly.
Rob, just out of curiosity on the ADA one, I know just to use Eagles View as an example, that is a chip trail at this point. And I know that there are some of those interim chip ones. So how does that get around ADA in that case?
Well, so the city has an obligation to comply with the law. Aside from that, there are ADA standards that have been adopted, and those typically have to do with recreational facilities. So we have to provide access to like a playground, for instance. Now, a hiking trail or recreational trail that doesn't provide access to an amenity, it doesn't actually have ADA standards, but we still have an obligation to make sure that we're considering accessibility. And so, you know, typically what we would do in those situations, what we do is we look at other standards. I'll give you an example. There's another federal law called the Architectural Barriers Act. And so it does have standards for recreational trails. So we can look at those and we can apply those.
That's really helpful. So another question then, sorry, I know we're hitting you with a lot, but I think Al raises some really good points. Is there, if we have members of the public or sometimes volunteer groups that want to create some of these that might have more resources to do some of the work? I mean, I know like the Audubon Park here in West Salem, which I would imagine might be owned by them, or managed by them. I'm not sure how that structure actually works, which is a separate question. But I'm wondering, is there like a way that folks could propose to say that I would like to build a trail here, here's what I could provide? I hear what you're saying too about these parks being on the edge of the city, so there's some concerns there about location, but I would hate for volunteer resources from neighborhood associations and other groups to just kind of fall by the wayside because they don't know where to put it. So is there even a way that folks could submit that for consideration for the city where you could take that and put it alongside some of the plans to see if it would fit?
Yeah, we actually absolutely do. And I would say it's on a case-by-case basis. You know, Fairview Park is an undeveloped community park where Mark Wigg has helped us lay out a trail and build it. And so we worked with him, and so that's a success. You know, the Salem Area Trail Alliance has been a great volunteer group, has worked with us to develop the Skyline Trail and supports the Croissant Trail. So it does happen where the opportunities exist.
But let's say there's a community group that said they'd like to build a trail. What would they do in that case to try and get in touch? Would they email you directly, or what's the process for them to figure out if that's even feasible?
Yeah, so typically they contact park operations, and then park operations will reach out to me if it's an issue. You know, for example, cultural resources or ADA. And I just, where the opportunities exist, I think we keep an open dialogue and we make it happen.
That's helpful. Thank you. Keith, I see you're back on your phone, it looks like. Did you have additional questions before you got cut off there? It seemed like you froze.
I did. Computer crashed on me there. It's on its last leg, but no, I think we covered it. I think going back to my broader point related to it, right? I think us having a more comprehensive idea of where our parks stand in their development and maintenance phases could be helpful to us as we get these public comments, and helpful for us to work with the city staff to identify those opportunities and help manage them. And so that's kind of my broader thought related to this. So, but I certainly understand the challenges there that Rob was laying out and that Jennifer mentioned, right? In terms of the maintenance, there's a lot more to it than just throwing some mulch on the ground to make a trail. So, so appreciate all the thought and input there.
Al, did you have any other comments?
Thank you. That's
Okay.
good.
All right, well, we will move. We have the homelessness update from Gretchen, and then we'll talk about the capital improvement plan, which might answer some of these questions. So Gretchen, thank you for being patient. We will turn it over to you. Appreciate you joining us today. Oh, you're on mute right now. Let's make sure we can get you to unmute.
Oh, there it goes. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. That was odd. It looked like it unmuted, but then it told me, bizarre. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me tonight. And I thought I'd offer a couple of quick updates about work that we're doing in parks, work to address the overall issue, and see what questions that you might have, if that sounds all right.
That sounds great.
Very good. I also pasted in the chat a link to our webpage, which contains a couple of tools that can be helpful. There's a place to sign up for weekly updates if you're curious about staying in touch with what we're doing related to homelessness. And there's also a place where you can report concerns. There's times when people see areas of concern. If there's people living in areas and you might be concerned about their welfare or the garbage or other resultant impacts to the livability of the space. And so there's a place where you can go online and report that. So just wanted you to be aware of those tools on there. But generally speaking, we do have work planned in 3 parks in the near future. Our next step is going to be to go over to River Road Park. We've become really concerned at River Road Park about the volume of garbage that's all along the bank. And people who are living in an area that we're not comfortable for safety, there's they have to do things to turn on a nearby, I'm not going to get the words right, but there's a nearby plant that if they had to turn it on in certain cases, that wouldn't be good for the people who live there, as well as the bank is just so steep, not to mention the impact to the park users. So we're really concerned about River Road Park and plan on we've already been notifying the street outreach partners to be letting people know there about that decision. And then we'll be formally posting those notices coming up here Friday or Monday, and then having a cleaning team come on Thursday to make sure to remove all of the garbage and then to handle properly any property that was left or abandoned. After that, we anticipate transitioning to Wallace Marine Park. Our tentative plan is to go next to Wallace. Several of us were out there today, particularly looking at the north end of the park. You all were talking about weather and the wind. Oh my gosh, when you were out there, it was so windy. But the plan is there's a section sort of, if I were to describe it, I suppose if you're standing in the softball complex, it might be at the south end of the softball complex area, if you will, kind of in between soccer and softball on the to get my bearings for a second, on the east end. So there's a section there we'd like to work on. And then there's also a section way at the north end, maybe the northwest section, if you will, to reduce the number of people who are living there and remove the garbage and the waste. So there'll be a 2-week effort over at Wallace Marine Park. And then that should take us next to Cascades Gateway Park. You know that there's work going on to try to repair and restore Cascades Gateway Park towards an eventual reopen. And we met today in person, some folks from the parks team, as well as from Salem Police and Salem Fire, met with the nonprofit team Church at the Park, who operates a day center near Cascades Gateway. And we talked through and troubleshooted an approach with the goal of concluding living and camping towards responsible and respectful communication with everyone that's there, and coordinating the service information with wanting to be able to reopen that park and sustain having people not return consistently. We've struggled where we've cleaned and then folks have returned, and we clean and folks return. So we're really working at a sustainable effort at Cascades Gateway to hope to reopen the park and see the disc golf folks come back and all of that. So River Road, Wallace, and Cascades are in the near term for us. We did also visit Pringle today, Pringle Park, and take a look at the areas under the bridges. If you were to go under High Street, there's some areas under bridge work there that we also talked through to try to see if we could come up with a more sustainable solution. Generally, overall, we're encouraged about some changes to the capacity for how we work to address unmanaged locations. We have a new decision by City Council to focus 2 police officers and 4 staff who can do sanitation with Public Works, and one coordinator position whose focus is going to be early and relentless focus on areas throughout the city, with the hope of increasing health and safety and livability. It's our thought that if we can be there very early and very often, we can assist at the early end before things really get out of hand, keep things cleaner, keep things safer, conclude areas earlier that need to be included, develop relationships with people that are out there, which can increase the likelihood of succeeding with having people transition into services. So we're encouraged about that. We're in the hiring and developing and training stage right now for that team. So it's not operational yet, but I hope not before too long, we'll start to see the improvement of that investment. We also are continuing all of the other strategies underway to expand alternative shelter options and expand affordable housing, which makes a difference on these issues. So I think with that, I didn't want to take too much of your time, but wanted to offer those base updates and then just see what's on your minds, or if there's any questions I can respond to.
Thank you, Gretchen. Always appreciate you coming, and thanks for sharing this website as well. I guess just one initial one I wanted to clarify is you were mentioning how there's the process of cleaning and then folks return, cleaning and folks return. I know that's something that we all hear about and we all see, and I'm just, is the additional resources with police and for sanitation staff kind of the remedy for that? Like how are you trying to address that, especially in some of the parks that you're cleaning right now?
Yeah, you bet. I would say it's a partial remedy, but it's certainly not a complete remedy, because we have some gaps in our solution, our tool belt, that I'm not sure how we're going to solve. There's a group of people for whom they are like technically to law enforcement, they're unable to aid and assist in their own defense. And so it limits things there. They're not at a level where they pose a danger to themselves and others by the legal definition. They also would have substantial behavioral health challenges that make them a person for whom it's really tough to find a place in a shelter or in an apartment where they'll be able to be successful. It's indicative of a higher level of need, but there's not you can't compel a person into those kinds of programs, and there's also not enough of those programs. So that might be an example where we're still going to be really scratching our heads. I'm hoping that the relationship building that can happen, and maybe shining a light and helping to communicate about the number of people in that situation, will be helpful as a community and as a region. We try to work at resolving those things. There'll be others who I believe will be able to be successful with. Today at Wallace, there was conversation about two individuals that through a relationship development, it appeared that people who'd been outside a long time had been open to accepting help and coming in. And so we're so grateful for that progress. And we believe with others, we'll be able to succeed. I suspect that having garbage bags, the ability to remove garbage, the ability to respond much more quickly, I think will make a difference, because sometimes size can make a difference. And the more things grow, the more there can be conflicts that can create issues. I've been disappointed at how slow we have to be sometimes at responding to very, very concerning issues. I was concerned about Marion Square Park for quite a while before I was able to have the resources to be able to conclude camping there, for example. And so if we can get quickly with dedicated resources, I think it'll be more successful, but it certainly won't solve the problem. I don't want to say it's a complete remedy, but I think it'll be a helpful tool.
One more clarification, I guess. I'm not saying anyone else on mute, but just when you say you couldn't get the resources and you were frustrated by that, which is very understandable, is where was that stuck in the process? And is there an ability to create more flexible funding to do that rapid response? Or, is there a way for, how do we amend that? And is that something that as the Parks Board, we can be helping raise some noise for that? Because obviously that's an area where we're concerned about as well.
Thank you. You know what? That's exactly what council did by creating this new decision, was respond to this need already. I mean, the reality is that all of us, at the city have our responsibilities and our full plates. And there wasn't, up until what we're creating now, dedicated positions and people. So I pull from police, I pull from public works. We draw from resources that otherwise might go to help parks and other areas of public works operations, or police, we're pulling off of the other duties and responsibilities at the police department. Myself, we added to what I do to help be responsive and coordinate. And so the idea was to recognize there are so many people living out of doors right now. Response time makes a difference. We need to create a dedicated team. And so that's what council decided to do, is they wanted to see improved response time and the ability to get out. So I think it's been done, Dylan. I mean, I think they made that decision. So now we just got to get it operational and get it going. And then I hope we'll all see the benefit from it.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Rick, I thought you were about to ask something. Yeah, Rick.
Yeah, as you know, Alan and I went and visited every single park in Salem and talked to a lot of people, talked to some of the volunteers and the staff and also the users. And at Wallace Marine, we were able to talk to a young lady, a staff person, and she talked about how important it was for her and for the situation to build a rapport with the people that were there. And she knew a lot of them by first name. I think that really makes a difference. I think you alluded to that earlier. In terms of them seeking help, because there's, a lot of substance abuse and mental issues there. It really helps if you have a rapport with the person, so they would be willing to accept that. And kudos to the young lady. I don't think we got her name. I would hope and assume that that's going on in other areas too.
Agreed. Very good observation. It absolutely matches my experience as well as everything I read about what's happening around the nation.
Keith, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. And Gretchen, thanks for the update. I think it's, at least it feels like to me, we are certainly in a much better place and a continually improving place from where we were a year and a half ago, 2 years ago on this situation, at least relative to the parks. So I think that's good. Appreciate your leadership in the city's office to make that happen. And sorry if I missed some of the stuff you were talking about there as I was juggling between my phone and computer and trying to deal with the technology there. But thinking about it's springtime and it's been raining and miserable all day today. And the river keeps raising. What I remember from the past couple of years is particularly at Wallace, when the floodwaters would come through and sweep affect all of the people that were there camping, sweep all of the garbage down the river. And it sounds like you were at Wallace today doing some of that cleanup. But is there any particular seasonality to that kind of response, right? Thinking about the assumption that floodwaters will move through Wallace again at some point this spring. Is the city doing anything to kind of help alleviate the garbage situation that could affect the rivers there as it comes through?
Yeah, we're super concerned about living right along the waterways, for pollution, for garbage, for hygiene issues that goes in. Oh, good, Jennifer, thank you. She's letting us know Dina is the person. That's awesome. Yes, we're aware that it's one of the areas that people return to regularly. And so far, what we've been able to figure is having early notification when we understand the waters are rising. Some people know when on their own make adjustments, and for others, we've been so grateful for, again, Public Works notifying when we expect waters to rise, and then we do a notification that goes out to, there's about 130 people on an app that are people who are made up of a variety of organizations and volunteers who do outreach and who are in communication with people. So we spread the word through those resources, when we understand the waters are going to rise. I know at Wallace, there's also the maintenance of porta potty and a large garbage thing to try to recognize, okay, people are here and we need to not have these items going into the waterways. So please use these facilities. They're situated nicely to help with softball as well, but they can also help provide a prevention for being in the waterway too.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
great. Remember last year with the floodwaters, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, where
Yeah. Oh yeah. We were really worried. We had big
That's
issue
pretty
at
dramatic.
Cascades too. Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
That's good. Thank you.
And Mill Creek's another one running through town. That's a concern. And there is a seasonality. You notice in the worst weather, people maybe come in, you see more in downtown with where they can get in under the awnings. And then in the summers, I think the parks are impacted more. You can kind of watch, you can see the movement people make.
So Gretchen, Al, were you asking a question? Sorry. I thought you're on
Yes,
mute.
I have a brief one.
Yeah.
I am a little concerned about, I guess what it'd be called outwash. Just above the Peter Courtney Bridge, there's been a lot of outwash from the stream that ends up right there at the bottom of the slough, in and under near the bridge. There's a beaver dam just upstream from there across the slough, and beaver activity down from there in Riverfront Park. But aside from that, there's a couple bikes that have been thrown off the bridge. There's a lot of stuff that has come down, some tires and other things. Is there provision for getting that kind of debris cleaned up at any time?
You know, here's where I wish I had Mark with me, because we were talking today about the slough and coordination that we're doing with the railroad to make sure that we have the proper flagging in place to be able to do some cleaning, but I'm not certain if that's the area. But I do understand, as just a park user there, what you're talking about, but I don't think I've got a precise answer for you this evening is if the slough work that we're planning will address that area. So I'd have to get back to you on that. I've seen that too. Yeah, Jennifer, Mark was saying that there's some city ownership, there's some ODOT ownership. We have to work with a railroad to have a railroad approved flagger. Jennifer might know, but there is an area we're planning on working, and I'm not certain if that's the right one.
It's pretty extensive. I kayak a lot, and every time I go out, I bring back at least one garbage bag, largely picked up just by going the perimeter of the slough access area.
That's so nice of you to be pulling that out. Thank you. I'm sorry you're having to deal with that.
Well, that's just something to do, but I can't do tires and bikes, and
Right.
there's just more than what a normal, and that's not uncommon for others to do the same. It would take a bit of a foot effort coming in. So I don't know. I hope that we can do something about it.
Yeah, thanks. I'll take that back to the team.
Thank you.
Gretchen, one of the questions I hear a lot is like timeline in terms of, when are things going to get better, or what is the city's timeline for this? And I know there's the micro shelter and the news, and you're thinking about the court and whatnot. But when you lay out this great plan of River Road and Wallace and Cascade, I know all that takes a lot of time, and there's this new council, the new resources that you were talking about here. Can you give us a sense of, time horizon is something that we can take back to the public that ask us like, well, what is the plan in terms of timeline for this to be worked on by the city?
If you're meaning the bigger picture of when will we see substantial change, is that kind of what you mean? Or do you mean
I guess both.
specific?
I mean, like what, how do you talk about it personally in the work you're doing? So both, I guess one question is, what are the immediate timelines for those 3 cleanups you're talking about? And then 2 is, as you think about substantial change, I know there's a lot of factors in there. And so how are you messaging that? And so we can be thinking about that same messaging.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Dylan. So we're going to do River Road Park next week. The notices are going to go either tomorrow or Monday, and then we clean on Thursday, May 19th. It's our tentative plan. We talked about it today, and we're going to finalize it Monday to then work at Wallace Marine Park, where the notices would happen in advance, and then cleaning would happen on May 26th and June 2nd, and then we're going to select days shortly thereafter, maybe June 9th, but I'm not sure,
So
to
pretty soon
begin-
though. Yeah.
Begin work at, the next horizon is River Road, Wallace, Cascades, and the slough. I forgot, the slough is another day that we're working on getting in that near time horizon, but it depends on a partnership with the railroad. So that's another one I would put up in this near term time frame, like May, June. The objective is to open, if we can, in July, my understanding. Jennifer can correct me, but that's my understanding, is striving towards a reopening sometime in July for Cascades. And
Right
then,
now, I'm
go
sorry,
ahead, Jennifer, yeah.
interrupted. So right now, tentatively, we're looking around July 4th. Part of that is predicated that date on, we're working, as Gretchen mentioned, at the onset on doing some repair and rehab work at Cascade. So some of that opening is contingent on that. We're working with contractors and their scheduling, and certainly the wet weather has not helped with some of those efforts. But that's the timeline as of now that we're looking at.
And then for the bigger picture, I've been asking for help with, I need someone who, I have an intern coming who's a master's student this summer, and I'm wondering if he can figure it out. But I've been asking people who's really good at algorithms and math, and I haven't had anybody take me up on it yet. But basically, here's my premise. So my theory is we might be able to study the types of situations. You know, we have chronic homeless, we have people who are newly coming into homelessness, and we can study the rates at which we can succeed. We can take a look at the rate at which, for example, our micro shelter villages, the opening of the navigation center soon, places like the Union Gospel Mission and Salvation Army, what are the rates at which they welcome people in, and then transition them to positive next destinations. To me, this is a giant math equation, and then try to predict it, right? If we have this many beds with this kind of a turn rate, and this many of the different types of people who are likely to go into these, here is the rate of change we can predict. And maybe there's some people for whom we do not have a solution yet. We're not succeeding with this group of people. So we need to focus on how do we succeed with this group of people. With this group of people, we're really succeeding, but we're short X number of services. But if we had, we'll be able to move faster if we have more. I'm convinced there's a math equation there. So I've just been very open, Dylan, and explaining, I don't know, but I'm open to all of you out there who might be able to help me plot all of that and see. I'm hoping to hit my intern this summer up with it and see if he succeeds. But that's the question before I think us all.
That's a really good that's a good thought. I appreciate the way you're thinking both in the short term and long term, and trying to figure out some finite or some actual numbers to that, some data.
Yeah. We're certainly excited about the navigation work that's happening at the micro shelters right now, and the eventual opening of the navigation center that Community Action is going to be running for us. Those, when you apply the evidence-based practices that are applied, you can see people really stabilize and then transition positively. We're super excited about that. And that'll be a big part of the success, I think. Having supportive services like what Salem Housing Authority is opening for people who need staff on site to succeed, really more of an assisted living kind of approach. Those are such critical needs. We have people with significant disabilities that need that extra help. And so the more you see Housing Authority opening those programs, we'll succeed with those folks too.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Any other questions for Gretchen? Okay, well, Gretchen, thank you as always for coming. I really appreciate you answering all these questions so thoroughly for us and for the work you're doing.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, let's now move on to our next agenda item. And I see Tammy. Oh, there you are. Perfect.
I'm here. You get to see my messy bedroom behind it. And we're remodeling, so we have stuff. So Tammy Stars, I work in public works engineering. Glad to be here this evening to talk about one of my favorite subjects, the 5-year capital improvement program and plan. So my job in engineering is to manage and coordinate the CIP. I meet with committees and stuff. So I'm going to share my screen and show you a presentation that I give to groups on this. If I can find, I never know where to go. I'm not seeing my presentation now, so hold on. Let me move it over.
Are you able to, is the share screen showing up for you? I'm just trying to make sure you're a co-host, so you have that option.
Well, no, I'm seeing my stuff.
Okay.
But I'm seeing stuff that I don't really want to see. So I'm not seeing that presentation. So sorry about that. Just give me a second. Yeah, that is really strange. Why did I put it over there? It's not showing box. Huh. Sorry about that. I don't know why my
Do you, Mitch, I wonder if she were to send the presentation quickly to you or I, one of us could screen share to move along?
We could probably do something like that. Yeah.
oh, I got it.
You got it?
Yep, I think I do. So if I click on that and I hit share,
There we go.
All right.
you see
Great.
that?
Yeah, we do. Yep. I think you want to hit,
Okay.
you want to full screen it, but or start presentation under the slideshow menu, but otherwise that should be good.
Okay. From the beginning. Okay, are you seeing the slideshow or are you seeing, what are you seeing?
I can still see the Microsoft PowerPoint slides. It didn't go to the full screen yet. Maybe try hitting from beginning one more time.
Not seeing that.
Down in the bottom right, usually there's, you can hit the little one of the, by the Zoom button that usually takes you to the full screen as well.
I'm not seeing that.
Bottom right.
Bottom right.
Bottom right.
Yeah, there's like notes and then there's a couple symbols there and the one that has a projector, or well, the one that kind of looks like it's on a stand should work for you, I think. Right before the slider that says 112%.
No, I'm not seeing it. Mitch, I'm going to send it to you really quick.
Or you can just, we can see it well enough that I think if you just want to go this way, this will work for everyone, I think.
Okay.
Let's just go, we can see the slides, so this will work.
Do you see that? Is that better?
You're still on the first, nothing has changed. So it's either possible that your screen is frozen or try changing to the next slide and see what happens. Okay, that's working. So I think we can proceed for the time.
Okay. So I know some of you are new on the board. I mean, there's a couple that I've recognized from past years. So just kind of going over what is the goal of the 5-year CIP and how do we get there? So we have to follow Council Policy C9 and what that says, it says we want to create a transparent CIP process. We establish a risk-based priority list. We match the priority list to limited resources in a thoughtful and responsible manner. And we establish an internal CIP review committee to oversee this process. And to get through this, this is a year-long effort. Every year we get about a 1 month break, but it's definitely a team effort. We have CIP committee meetings. We discuss projects. We discuss new issues that come in that either the citizens send in or staff issues that come up. All of our infrastructure and public works, the parks, transportation, water, sewer, storm, those are all scored and ranked based on criteria. And then myself and Aaron Kimsey, who's an engineer in engineering, him and I go through and we program funding. A little bit different for parks SDCs. We really look to Rob and the planning group to help with the SDC programming. And then of course, working with Jennifer for general fund or top funding. We create the CIP document from the ranking and what is funded. It has to be funded to be in the CIP. We have to have a good funding source. I present to the engineering management team, the public works, to this board. We've had, open houses in the past trying to get more outreach out there to the public. And that's one of the things I'll be working on again this year. We submit it to the budget office, and the budget office is the owner of the document, even though Public Works we do the majority of all the work for it. They produce the final CIP document. They present it to the budget committee, and we have mapping. And just so all of you know, before I get more in depth in this, is on the city's website, you can go to the budget office and finance, and you can pull up the capital improvement plan as well as the capital budget. But if you go to the capital improvement plan, you will find the proposed CIP document that was the budget committee yesterday evening. They did approve it for a recommendation to council to go. So it'll go to council on June 13th for the public hearing, and then adoption along with the capital budgets on the 27th of June. So those are on the city website already, the proposed ones. And there'll be a few tweaks and changes as we go through, because that always happens when we're presenting the CIP and if there's any corrections or anything. But I wanted to let you guys know that that document is available online. How do projects get into the 5-year CIP? Like I said before, they're submitted by citizens. And again, on the website, there is a place you can go and submit a request. So if you know something that's out there, whether it be any type of infrastructure, you can go in there and put in a CIP request form. It would come to me, and then I take it to the committees, and we explore, what is the issue and can we fix it? Then we work with the committee. So each infrastructure has a committee that's set up, and we go through all of that. We score, we prioritize the committee on scoring. There's 2 of us from engineering that score. For parks, Jennifer scores, Rob scores. So we have planning, we have operations, and then we also have engineering on that. We identify the funding, like I said. Public outreach not only occurs during the public hearing and stuff, but that outreach is also the open houses and the master planning that goes through. And I know Rob is heavily involved in a lot of that public outreach. Then it goes to the budget committee, and it's recommended to city council. Like I said, last night it was approved to go forward. And then the city council either makes some changes or they go ahead and approve, and our 5-year CIP is adopted. And I want everybody to remember, it is a planning document. So it changes. Year 1 usually stays pretty safe, how we've planned it. But because it's a planning document, any emergency that comes up, such as the water issue and the cyanotoxin. So we had a huge thing where the CIP, we had to reprogram stuff to get funding in. Scoring criteria, the different scoring criteria is by infrastructure type. So in parks, we have 2 separate scoring. So the first bullets, the asset criticality and condition, the tourism development, operation and maintenance, safety and regulatory. Those are for those the operating side projects. So for instance, the Wallace Marine Playground, things like that. They would have all of this criteria. The SDC part, where we are using SDC funding, we don't look at that. We're looking at master planning. And so we start at relationships to other projects, the leveraging outside funding, the level of service we can provide. Does council have goals and objectives? What's the public interest? And then again, the social geographic equity is big. So parks operations, general fund projects, as well as TOT funded projects. And I'm just want to make sure everybody knows what the TOT is, the hotel tax. and they provide funding. And then the SDCs has the other criteria.
Tammy, I don't know if everyone knows SDC. It's
Oh,
if you
okay.
could explain
You know
those,
what?
that'd
And
be
I've
great.
been
System
told
development
that,
charge, right?
you
But
know.
if you want to just quickly give the 2-second version of that, that'd be
I
great.
will. So SDC, system and development charges, as new development occurs throughout the city. These system development charges are paid and paid in, and those funds are only able to be used for increasing capacity. So we can't use SDC funds for maintenance or operations. So we can purchase new parks, we can develop new parks. We can't use them for our parks that need a new playground or need a new trail. Unless it's increasing capacity, we're really limited. So the funding for a lot of the parks operations maintenance has to come from the general fund, or maybe from the upcoming bond, or from the occupancy tax, the hotel occupancy tax. So highlights of this CIP. In past years when I've presented to parks, I've only really presented parks, but I really wanted to give you guys a big overview because it all falls into workload and funding and everything, our whole CIP. So our projects program this year in the 5-year CIP is 124. That's across to all categories. It's approximately 260 million. As you can see, our funding comes from the rate transfers, the system development charges in all categories, state and federal grants, and our urban renewal agency we get a lot of funding from. We've had some increased revenue requests in year one, and those have to do with the Public Works Operations building. That's, you know, the picture that I showed at the beginning, and the roughing filter number 2 out at Guerin Island. So that's one of the next projects that's after the ozone treatment facility. We had some priority projects that had to come in, 2.4 million. In fact, I believe that has went up since I didn't update that number. We did have a park acquisition that came in at 1.7 million, so that would increase that number. We worked really hard this year on R&R, water sewer storm, our program there to develop and get out there and rehab our infrastructure. And then we also had a lot of developer delivered projects, and those are the ones that we get the SDCs. That's where the system development charges come from. Some of our challenges this year were reduced rate transfers in years 2, 4, and 5, reduced the hotel occupancy tax. We're not getting a lot of funding from them just because of COVID. So everybody's well aware of the pandemic and how that's hit our city. We have 517 unfunded issues at this time. Those are issues that become projects in the CIP. And we have aging infrastructure. Some of our key products.
Just real quick, I'm sorry, the 124, that's projects that are specific to parks?
Nope, that's 124 across the board. So we have 100, yep, all infrastructure. I do have, I'm going to show you a slide that has parks projects, what's in this CIP.
Great.
And just to clarify, the 517, you said those, is that equivalent to the 124? Those are projects, or did you say
Yes.
those are issues? And that's
Those
different?
are issues that would become a project. So it's just,
Okay.
it's the terminology we use in our CIP database.
Understood. Okay.
So, and I do have a slide we'll tell you later on how many currently are in parks as issues that are unfunded. So issues are unfunded at this time. So water, sewer, Willow Lake, storm, just giving you guys an idea of some of the key projects that are coming up and that were funded in this round of the CIP. We're still doing a lot in water, wastewater. Just to let you know, I'm really excited about being able in 5 years to fund $20+ million for the West Salem pump station. Willow Lake, we continue to have a large need out there. And stormwater, of course, is a big thing, and the Gold Crest Brook improvements out there, and then doing some work along McGilchrist. So we have the municipal buildings. We have the Public Works Operations Building that is in construction right now. The Navigation Center is going to be coming up for bid shortly, and Civic Center renovations, which is the customer service center, the all-in-one. And then in parks, the Riverfront Park electrical improvements. That's big because now that we have that beautiful amphitheater out there, we need to, make some improvements in the electrical to handle events. The Eco Earth Ball renovations, that's new. That's where it is getting the hotel occupancy tax. So they're providing $112,000, and then $300,000 would come from donations that the Park Foundation is working on. Gear Park, the master plan and phase 2 development, Brown Road Park, and Battle Creek. Transportation, we have a lot of grant funded projects. So we really try hard in transportation to take advantage of those grant opportunities where we're just having a city match of about 10%. And those come through either the state, Oregon Department of Transportation, or federal highway. And then urban renewal, of course, does a lot of street improvements. They're doing a lot of streetscape downtown. And let's see. So now here's the one. I hope you guys can see this. So I kind of looked at the 5-year CIP for Parks alone, because I know that's what you guys are most interested in. It's 18.6 million over 5 years. For acquisitions, the one that just came in late was the State Street and Cordon Road property acquisition for 1.7 million. And then we do have in the 5-year CIP future parkland acquisition that we always, when Rob and his group is going through and putting the SDC funds, we always put money in the future parkland acquisition each year, and that totals 750 over 5 years. Master plans, we do have the comprehensive park system master plan in the 5-year CIP in about, I think, year 2 and 3. And then we also, again, like the future parkland acquisition, we have annual updates. So we have a number in there over each year of 5 years to update other park systems. So you can see we have 10 park master plans over 5 years. Stevens, Yoshikai, Ellen Lane, Fisher Road, Sather, Reed, Grice, D Street, Hazel Green, Reese Hill, and Hammond. So those specific master plans are listed throughout the 5 years. Our park improvements, there's 23 in this 5-year CIP. We have playground rehabilitation that's given money, and that is funded by general fund, along with the sport court overlay rehab. And then Gear Park irrigation is a general funded project. It was mentioned earlier, the Wallace Marine Park soccer area playground. That has been in the CIP. I think it was put in the CIP probably 3 or 4 years ago prior to COVID. And that is funded with the hotel occupancy tax. And that's one of the things, even though our funding has went way down with that, they are giving some more money in this year one to get that finished. So that one's in the works. Probably I'm going to assume that we are going to be working on that later this year or first thing in the spring next year, putting that in. It's has a lot to do with supply chain issues and getting the playground equipment. We have the River Road Park tennis courts, Stevens, Yoshikai, the development. And some of these numbers look low because, like Rob mentioned earlier, we start at a phase 1 or an interim, and it just depends. And then more funding would come in later years after that, year 5. Battle Creek, Bailey Ridge, D Street, Fairview Park, we're doing some work out there already. Brown Road, Eagles View, Eola, Riverfront Park development. And that one is just more as things come up. There's a little bit of funding put in there to take care of things that we need to. Fisher Road Park development, the electrical improvements, Aldridge Park, Gear Park, phase 2. As we discussed, the Eco Earth Minto Brown, the parking lot rehab, and I believe that one's close to the Unleashed Dog Park. Bush Pasture Park, Reese Hill, Wood Mancy Tennis Courts. That was a trust and agency funded project, along with general fund and money from the ASR improvements. So as we're building the ASR improvements, part of that, because it's in Wood Mancy Park, funding is coming from rates to help fund that. And that just went out to bid and bids came in. So we're reviewing those at this time and getting ready to award. Bill Regal Park, which isn't listed on here, is another one that is getting ready to go out to bid that was in last year's CIP. And then, of course, we have the SPIF projects that go through, I believe those go through you guys, and that is $600,000, and that would be 300 of general fund, give 60,000 each year. And then the neighborhood associations, you know, they have a portion that they have to, and we plan for 60,000 a year on those. So any questions on those projects?
We have a couple hands up, Al and then Rick.
Okay.
I'm interested to know where we can look at the details of the master plans. In particular, I'm interested in Grice Hill and the Battle Creek development.
Rob, would you like to answer that question?
Absolutely. So Grice Hill is hasn't been master planned yet. It's a few years out. Tammy or I could pull that up, probably let you know how many years it is out. As for Woodmansee, the master plan was recently updated and it's available on the city's website. You can download a PDF of the full report or just a single page, which is the actual site plan. And I'll drop a link for that in the chat in a moment.
Actually, I was asking about Battle Creek.
Oh, Battle Creek, excuse me, I'm sorry. Battle Creek is the same thing. It has been master planned. We completed the master plan several years ago. And I will drop a link in the chat for Battle Creek Parks master plan.
Good, thank you.
I'll just add the funds forecasted in the CIP for Battle Creek Park we know what we're going to start with. We don't ultimately know what we're going to do we're going to do with all the money, because that's a very complicated park. It has a multi-use aspect to it. And so there's a certain amount of the recreation development can't occur until the storm water mitigation stuff occurs, which are these giant expensive basins that have to be added to the park. So what we're looking for, just so at your edification, what we're looking to do there is to add another bridge in the park that would cross Battle Creek and kind of connect the two halves together.
And just for your information, Grice Hill Park Master Plan, the funding in there in the CIP is in year 3 and 4, and it's the master planning and interim use development. So there's 310,000 planned for the master plan and the interim use.
Rick, your hand was up next.
Yeah, Woodmansee master plan is not on that list. You know, and I got on the board just as that was being finalized. So my question is, why is it not on the list? And you know, there's a lot more to that master plan than just the tennis court reconstruction. Of course, the tennis court reconstruction is very near to my heart, but there's a lot more to that master plan, and it's not in the list of master plan. So that's my question, I guess. Where is it?
So I believe Rob said that master plan is complete.
Yeah, and I think the real question is when is the rest of the park proposals going to move forward? Correct? Yes.
Rob,
Beyond,
I think there's some confusion. I'm sorry. Just to help, I think, clarify where Rick stated, because my confusion initially as well is the master plans that are on the list there are the parks that are going to be due for a master plan over the 5-year CIP. So those are all parks that do not have a master plan currently. All of the parks that have a master plan, well, all the rest of the parks have a master plan are not on the 5-year list. And where those master plans are being implemented is in the parks improvement list. Is that correct?
That is largely correct. There are some parks in the city that are due their age that they just don't have a master plan, and they are not on this list because we really don't have a funding source to master plan them. And so I don't want to get this in the weeds too much, but there's more complication. It's a little bit more complicated than just the CIP process. The SDCs have a lot of strings attached with them. And I could get into that in more detail at a later time.
So, but back to Rick's question, I guess, then the Woodman C piece, the reason it's not on the master plan list is because we did just finalize that one. And therefore the master plan is being implemented in stages, as all master plans are. And the first stage of that is the tennis court reconstruction that is in the Parks Improvement list. At least in terms of the context of the CIP.
That is correct. And the project includes a little bit more than the tennis court reconstruction, but that is correct, absolutely.
Sorry to overtake Rick's questioning there, but I wanted to make sure I was clear on my own end too. Rick, did that answer your question?
I saw a thumbs up. So Keith, did you have a question?
Cool. I couldn't see anything because I'm on my phone and things are funny. I did. Well, I guess I'm just going to harken back to my previous comment of this list is great. I love this discussion. I wish this list is something that SPRAB would be involved in, right? I think this gets to the prioritization and the strategic approach and the awareness. Some of these questions that have just been raised, right, are about the awareness of where parks are in the planning process, where we are in the implementation of those plans. Having our board more involved in this and more involved in these strategic discussions, I think could be helpful to our role. I think could be helpful to the parks role. I think could help us be better advocates for our parks to city council when city council goes to review this in more detail. So that's just kind of the point I want to emphasize is these are all great, but I don't know that we knew about any of this necessarily happening in any sort of detail. And I would encourage us to be more involved in that process and in the prioritization and awareness of some of the operations here.
Thank you, Keith. That's a really good point. Al, you have a question?
No.
I do want to second what Keith is saying. And I think what I would really appreciate is we have like roughly 90 park properties in the city. And so I know that's a lot, but also just kind of looking at the number here, it would be really helpful to kind of know where things are at. And I imagine you all, Rob, have some kind of list like that operating internally in terms of like what's coming up or how are these selected. But if there's some information you all could share with us as a follow-up to this meeting, or maybe we could have it as a topic next time, just to kind of help us understand that prioritization, I think that would really be useful for us, and to kind of know, like, when a master plan finishes, how quickly does it usually go into the queue for us for the CIP versus, how long does it take because there's a backlog, basically.
I'll give a short answer right now, and then I'll follow up with Tony to see if we can't get something on the agenda for a future meeting. So the short answer is that there's a policy set in the Comprehensive Park System Master Plan. It's policy 4.7, and it reads: park development will be prioritized based on % build out of service area and population density, with equitable geographic distribution throughout the city, and as funds become available. And so as staff, we are doing our best through mapping to try to really hone in on what that means and how can we make data-driven decisions. And so what I think I'll talk to Tony about is coming back and showing you guys what we're thinking about, what we're doing in terms of mapping. And this is all kind of a prelude to the what was just mentioned by Tammy, the update to the Comprehensive Park System Master Plan, which is a few years off.
Thank you for that. Keith, I see your hands back up.
Yeah, and I think you might have just answered my question there at the end. But yeah, and Rob, and I don't doubt that you have a good process for it. And I don't mean to suggest that we should be disrupting that process in any sort of robust way. But I think there's value in having us as the citizen advisory board being more aware of what that process is and the various elements and the comprehensive nature of it. And I think that'll help us be more informed in the awareness of all of the work that you guys are dealing with. And as we're advising you and making errant requests about other things that we think need to be addressed, right? Being able to put that into the context, having more awareness of the context of all of these situations, I think would be helpful to us in that thing. The other question I had, and I think you answered at the end is I remember that the comprehensive plan is due for an update. And so that is the first bullet here on the master plan is the comprehensive plan update for the park system. Is that correct? And that'll start next year, I believe.
I'm gonna look really quick.
Yeah, I think Tammy will confirm for me, but I believe there's some funding in the next year. But in terms of our plans, we're starting pretty slow. We're really doing some prep work, data collection, mapping, as I mentioned, looking at what we have in our park system now. Tony and I are going to be doing some prep work. In the bigger picture, the schedule is that our Salem is in the adoption process. It's headed to City Council soon. And then after its adoption, the first supporting document that is set to be updated is the Salem Transportation Plan. And then the park plan is going to lag behind approximately a year or so.
Okay.
So there is some money in the CIP. We're getting started with a pre-start, and it's coming in a few years.
Okay.
Yes,
Thanks.
so I can confirm that funding's coming in year 2, and then some additional funding in year 3. And I appreciate the board wanting, more input, and I think that's part of that public outreach, what you guys do and who you talk to. What I can provide is the issues or the projects that are sitting in the database that have been scored. And so if you guys have other, you've seen in the parks, other things that need to be done or have ideas, then that's when I would encourage you, to go and submit a request through the process so that, staff can look at it and determine, what can we do and what can't we do. And then we'd be able to, provide that information back. So I can provide a list of one, the CIP presentation. I can send that to you, Dylan,
That'd be wonderful.
to give
If you send
out.
it to Tony, she can send it out to all of us. That'd be great.
Okay, perfect. And then I will also in the next few weeks get a list of what issues we actually have in the database, what has been scored, and their score and how they rank. Now I also need you to remember that a project may score higher than another project that's programmed because of funding. So you might have a high priority park project that's, scores high, but no funding is available. So we will go down to the next one where we have funding. And that happens throughout all categories of our infrastructure. And I can also send Tony the scoring criteria because it's a weighted score, and you'll be able to see, what are the questions we ask ourselves as we look at new issues that come in. I think that might be really helpful for everybody. Okay, am I good to go forward?
I just have one more quick clarification. Sorry. In terms of the list, you've been mentioning whether it's in year 2 or year 3, and I just went and downloaded the proposed 2023. Is that in this? I don't want to read 76 pages right now while I'm talking to you, but is that in here somewhere in terms of which year these projects fall? So
yes, they are. So parks projects start on page 13, and
Okay.
they're listed by project, and you will see where they are funded.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I will look into that later and then email you with any questions, but appreciate that.
Okay. Anything else? I'm almost done. Sorry to be talking so long.
No, we are hitting you with all the questions.
So this is just a little bit on allocation by infrastructure and the different sources. So you can see parks. This is where it's the 18.6 million through 5 years, and this is the amount of funding by year. And that is all sources, which include donations, the general fund, allocations that we get, the lodging tax or hotel occupancy tax, as well as SDCs. And SDCs are $16.3 million of that 18 million. So, and this is, a lot of people ask a lot of questions about the utility rates, and this is how it's funded over the 5 years, that $131 million that we're funding our infrastructure projects for the utility. Then this is the issues inventory. Parks currently has 93 unfunded projects or issues in the CIP database. This goes up every year. And like I said earlier, it comes from either the public or it comes from operations staff or the planning staff. We get those in, they come in, we discuss them, we score them, prioritize them. And that number grows every year. So that is the end of my presentation, but if you have any more questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Tammy, those 93 projects, do they have a total price tag?
I don't, probably not.
Okay.
So what happens is those come in, and as they're scored, you know, how they're put in priority, then I would ask engineering staff to get estimates. So some of them, yes, we have some estimates, but I'm really nervous about estimates during this time because of supply chain issues. You know, the cost of building is just skyrocketing.
Yep.
So if there are estimates, the list I would provide you probably will not have that on it.
Okay, that's fine. I just was curious what number that would be.
It's a very high number.
Very high number, I'm sure.
I can tell you that.
That's why I was curious to hear what it was. Thanks.
I would love to have everything estimated in current year, but with 517 projects, it's really hard.
Yes.
So
That's a lot.
And Tammy, could you said this at the start, but I just want to make sure I understand the process. So it's a 5-year plan, but it's revisited every year. Is that correct?
that is correct. So year one, we really try to make that as, oh, what's the word I want to use? Sorry, I'm just getting over COVID.
So sorry to hear that.
I lived through it, so that's good. Year one, we try to keep it's pretty firm, you know, just because we have estimates that are done, we funded stuff, you know, emergency projects come in and we may have to move out funding or rearrange some of the funding. You'll notice that a lot in the utility. You'll see where, you know, like the roughing filter needed another $3 million. Well, what did that affect, and what are the rate transfers that come in to pay for capital construction? In parks, we don't see it as much changing unless it is general fund or the hotel occupancy tax, just because those numbers are down in that top funding. And I think we're pretty much status quo for the next couple of years. We don't really get any more top funding until about year 3 or 4. They did come through for us this year. That was really nice. They came up and they funded, you know, like the Wallace Marine Park, another $73,000, and the electrical improvements. And I don't know, Jennifer, do you want to add anything at this time, or Rob, anything else in regards to the CIP?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think when Tammy sends you the list with the issues and the criteria, and you see some of those scores, I think that will be helpful for you to kind of see what's already in the database, what deficiencies we've already referenced, and it may spur more questions, and it also may spur, well, oh, what about this project, and so forth. But hopefully that information will be useful. I think certainly you make good and valid points that if we integrate you earlier in the process and sharing and communicating that information, and help kind of garner your feedback and what you're hearing from the public and your own information, that can be useful information for us as those projects are being evaluated and discussed and ultimately scored, as opposed to kind of, now where it's kind of the back end. And so they're already kind of solidified, and it's really just an FYI kind of stuff for at least year one. As Tammy said, those are pretty solid in what we're going to do, but certainly it would give you an opportunity, as she's presenting now, as you look out from years 2 to 5, that there is opportunity still for feedback and comment and stuff that may impact movement of those projects one way or another. Sometimes we don't always move them forward. We move them, further down, or end up eventually dropping them from the list because of circumstances. So there still is opportunity for you folks for those years to be impactful.
That's really helpful, Jennifer. Thank you. And I know one of the questions I asked Jennifer about a while ago or recently was, I live over in West Salem, and the power line trails here, people use that to walk their dogs, and it's, just a dirt path with a lot of weeds. And I know in a lot of cities, there's there's an agreement with the power companies like Beaverton and Hillsborough do this. And Jennifer had mentioned that's something that could potentially be on the CIP list at some point. And so I guess, Tammy, how would I go from A to B in that sense? Is that to actually get that considered? And, obviously, like I said, a lot of people use it. Maybe there's a partnership agreement there that could make it easier with funding and such.
So what I would do is I would put in a CIP request form, go to the city website, pull up the form, submit it. And then that way I can start, and other city staff, we can start looking at that and what do we need to do.
And I guess I should probably check your list that you're going to send out first to make sure you're not already working on that. But
I don't believe that's on there.
Okay.
So
it's not on there yet, Dylan, since our email communication. So
Okay.
So that would be helpful. That would help codify it on that in the database at least. Yes.
yeah,
I
and
will
get
do
it in
that.
front of us.
All right. Any other questions for Tammy? Well, Tammy, we asked you a lot of questions, so I really appreciate your patience and all the thorough detail and just all the information. Please do send us some of that follow-up. I'm looking forward to looking at the PowerPoint. There was a lot of good data in there for us. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate coming, and I enjoy your questions. So I will put my email in the chat. And if you guys have any other questions regarding the CIP, don't hesitate to reach out. Always willing to talk about one of my biggest job functions. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thanks, Tammy.
All right. Let's move on to our next agenda item of board member updates. Anything folks would like to share?
I think this is where I give my update on the library strategic plan, and the change in the last month since the last time I gave an update is at least meetings are in the process of being scheduled. So I expect that's going to pick up quite a bit here as the summer moves on. Keep you posted.
And Keith, do you just want to, I don't know if Al, and I guess Joan's not with us tonight, but if they know what that is, I don't know if you just want to give, 30-second elevator pitch of what that strategic plan is.
Yeah, for the city library, working on a new strategic plan to guide the library. And so they put together a whole committee of folks that has representation from a number of city entities and citizen boards. And so I am serving as SPRAB's representative to that strategic planning process.
And just for the additional knowledge or context, it got paused when the head librarian left, correct? And then,
that is correct. Yeah. So it started maybe about a year and a half ago, and got kind of halfway launched, and then the city librarian left and has been in a bit of a pause situation since then. So getting restarted here.
Yeah. Thank you, Keith. Appreciate that. And I will encourage everyone, if you're not sure, I know some of these things start like that one started a year and a half ago. So if you're ever not sure, please speak up, because I don't want that to be confusing. All right, well, let's go through our updates then. We have our Mission Street Parks Conservancy update, their board meeting minutes. Were there any questions or comments? I don't believe we have Christine with us tonight, but I'm not seeing any questions. Okay, Our urban forestry update was postponed this month. Next month, we're going to have Mylan, I believe, and we'll be talking about heritage trees and some of the other topics that we previewed at what was that, the March meeting, I think we talked about that. So that's coming up. Parks and Natural Resource Planning update. Do folks have questions or comments for Rob?
Dylan, I don't have my computer in front of me that has the PDF on it, but there was something in there about, well, I had two questions. Brown Road project. I don't know that I knew what that was referring to. So that was one question, if there's more details about that. The other was the Skyline Trail change, and I was just curious about if the school gave a reason for why they're making that change and kind of when they notified the city about it. It just seemed fairly abrupt coming up here with the summer. And so I was just kind of curious about that process there.
Yeah, thank you. I can take both of those. So first one, Brown Road Park is an undeveloped neighborhood park located on Brown Road in Northeast Salem. So it's in an area that's I would generally call a high need for more parks. We recently applied for a state grant to help fund the phase 1 of development of that park. And we are proceeding with design of that project next year, kind of regardless of the grant or not. We hope we get the grant, but so we're proceeding on the development of that neighborhood park. The second one has to do the Skyline Trail. A little context on the trail. It was developed by some volunteers, the Salem Area Trail Alliance, several years ago. It presently goes through the school district's property at the high school campus there. The school district is, we have a representative here to add, but they're currently have a project going on, a capital improvement project. And when they came in for a site plan review for that project, it triggered something. It triggered a land use action that we didn't have an easement for the trail. So we asked for one, and the school district said, well, that's okay, but we want the trail to be where you show it in your park system plan. And it's not exactly where it's shown. So they are graciously removing the trail. They're paying for that. And then that's happening here pretty soon, I understand. And it leaves a very small gap between their property and a public street. And it's short, but it's a very difficult connection. And so we have a city project now that's working on identifying the best design solution to make that complete that gap. Unfortunately, the timing of the city's project, we don't move that fast. There's a lot of complications on that project. There's going to be a gap, and so the trail closure is going to be kind of an extended period, longer than I would want. However, there is still a large section of the trail that will still be available to the public within the Skyline Natural Area, and there's some additional trails in the natural area so people can make loops. So I mean, there will still be a functioning trail amenity for the public. It's just going to be realigned, and it's going to take longer than maybe I would hope.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that was my thought. It's just kind of the timing of it was a bit unfortunate, but that makes sense and seems good. And it's a very cool trail. I like that it's there. Glad that we're able to work with the school system to have it exist and be there. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Rob, I had a quick question on the Fairview land donation. It was exciting to see that 14 acres. It says it will be managed as a natural area park. And I was just curious, could you remind me what that means exactly? And is that a temporary status that would then someday get a full master plan, or is that in perpetuity to be a natural area?
Yes, natural areas are one of our park classifications in the city. We have several.
Mm-hmm.
It is, I think it's going to be our 11th natural area park in the city if it is donated. It is Minto is a natural area, but generally these are parks that are left largely undeveloped in a natural state. Minto has a park master plan. It is certainly possible to master plan a natural area, but some of them, quite frankly, aren't. And so our intention will be to manage it. It has lots of great trees on it, and there is some accessed today by the public. There's a kind of an informal trail. And so those are the kind of things I imagine would continue. Now, like in the long-term future, what the city might do with the site, I have no idea. But if donated to the city, I think we will just kind of keep it as it is today, but probably maybe manage it a little. There's invasives and there's some hanging tree limbs. And so there'll be some activities going on once the city gets a hold of it.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Rob? All right, let's move on to the parks operations. Any questions or comments about the report?
Dylan, I had one more. Well, I don't know if this is for Rob or for operations. Might be for Rob. Beaver damage. I know the beaver planning is still underway. I was in Riverfront a few weeks ago and noticed pretty extensive beaver damage in there that looks like it's being addressed, although for some of the trees maybe a little too late. Just curious if the management planning is still moving forward. I think last time Patricia had commented on it, it was in a consultation process with the State Wildlife Agency. But kind of curious about the overall effort there, and then and specifically the damage in the parks, and if we're seeing kind of extensive damage to some of those trees. The ones up Riverfront were along the pathway there where it wasn't necessarily like in a forested area over at Lake Wallace or anything. So pretty noticeable and substantial damage to those parks trees. I'm not sure which is best.
Yeah,
for that, Robert, Jennifer, sorry.
Well, the best person to answer that is probably not in the meeting tonight.
Right, that's what I was thinking. That's
So I don't want to misspeak. So I'm probably just going to maybe we'll try to get you an update to the board members after the meeting.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah.
I can address that a little bit. I've spoken with some of the people noticing the same 3 trees over the last month or so, and I'm kind of keeping an eye on that. There were 3 trees that were being eaten on by the beavers, and 2 of them more extensively than the third larger one. And the third larger one has been protected with some chicken wire fencing so that it's preserved, though it's questionable, and they're going to have to be monitoring that more closely because there's some root damage that they're chewing off there too, and it might survive, but I think they're going to be watching it to see how it goes. And 2 of the trees were cut so that they were not going to fall due to the beaver work at an unpredictable time that could cause damage or hazard. And so rather than risk that, they sawed them off and let them fall down the bank so that the beavers could still access the tops for food as they normally would, but having done it a little bit preemptively so it's a little safer. And I don't know that there's any more planning on that other than monitoring what it is. There was a camera on the one tree that you can go online and see pictures that were taken of the beaver working on the trees if you're interested. They're generally nocturnal, and the pictures are taken about 3 a.m.
Very cool. I did see the camera and saw the chicken wire, and wasn't sure what the camera was finding, but thank you. I appreciate it.
And I can add one more tidbit to what Al said there. I reached out to Tony about this when I saw that too. And Jen Mongolo, she connected me with Jen, and Jen said that part of the problem is the lack of beavers' preferred vegetation lower on the bank. So they're evaluating the possibility of a beaver buffer closer to the water to reduce some of these conflicts. So that's one strategy. And then additionally looking at potentially more cages or sand latex paint mixture painted on the trees, which was not something I was as familiar with. So another kind of beaver deterrent.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed by the beaver's ambition to make it all the way up that bank. It was pretty steep.
At first, I was wondering if it was vandalism when I saw it because it was so high up there. But I was like, it sure looks like a beaver damage.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, good question. Okay, do we have any questions for Jen about her update? Not hearing any, but Jen, I just have to say, I always appreciate that you provide photos. It's always really nice to see the work in action. So thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. I was kind of pleased that tonight or in this month's report was not such a heavy focus on all the homeless cleanups, that there was something else that could be shared where there wasn't. I mean, yes, we need the homeless cleanups to continue, but it was nice to have a little change of pace to update on besides that being such a preponderance of the report.
Oh, well, and I know your team is always doing so much too. So it's nice to see all the other work and to get to read about it. You're right. A lot of it has been a lot of photos of trash cleanups recently, which is what the work has been, but I really appreciate seeing all this. And I know the fencing is probably really appreciated by the folks playing tennis out there. Rick, I don't know if you're headed that way to check out the new fence yourself.
Jennifer, the social media post on the Wallace replacement, has there been good engagement on that? I don't know how, again, don't have the PDF in front of me because the computer is malfunctioning, but I don't know how long that's been up, but has there been pretty good engagement from the public on that?
There has. I mean, actually, right after it was put up, we started getting some comments and some feedback. It's up until the 22nd of May. Through the 22nd of May. So just, a little while longer. But, our focus is really, we try to work with, if it's a neighborhood park, with them on kind of what the play equipment is that they think would be, conducive and kind of fit their neighborhood's needs. We try to kind of customize that as best as possible and give them a variety of options to choose from. But given that, Wallace is actively used and it's community park and actively used by all members of Salem, we found that surveys are a good messaging way, aside from just the West Salem Neighborhood Association, to kind of garner and solicit that impact or that input. So that we can kind of, see from everyone who uses Wallace kind of what their focus would want to be as far as the play equipment. That's a very high used playground equipment, especially with its adjacency right to the soccer fields. So we found that the surveys are, and I know Rob is, in fact, he's the one who initiated, kind of started doing that with the whole COVID thing. I think helped move that process along, using that as a tool for that outreach. And we found overall that it's a positive way and an easy way for folks to provide that input.
Yeah, that's great. Good to see. Good to hear. There's been good engagement. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Jen. Let's move on to Recreation Services update. Did anyone have any questions or comments on the report from Becky? I appreciated the comment about the darn rainy weather, which I think has come up many times tonight. So very fitting to have it in your presentation there.
Yes, it has a tendency to impact our activities, whether it's scheduled use of ball fields or our own programs. But the one thing that I will tell you that is different because of the weather, good segue, Dylan, thanks. The Salem Parks Foundation Walk in the Park was scheduled for May 7th, last weekend, and they canceled it. And I have worked with Betsy Belshaw, and we are rescheduling that to June 4th at Riverfront. So first week in May got canceled. We're on the first weekend in June now.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. I'm not seeing any other questions. So thank you so much for your update.
Thanks.
Next, we have the park damage report, which normally is more of just a glance at item, but I was really surprised that it was so many. A lot of times I feel like we get one or two incidents, and this one was a lot of smaller incidents, 51 total, and it compared against last year. Last year, April 20th was 0 incidents. And so I don't know, Jen, if that's you or who out in the city, but I'm just curious if anyone can explain kind of why that jumped from 0 to 51 within a year.
So So what we found, especially the last several months, but certainly the last year overall, is there is a huge increase in vandalism and graffiti. Graffiti is a huge issue that we're finding, especially in some parks. You know, Inglewood, for example, Northgate, Hoover are examples that just get hit over and over and over again. Some of them, Inglewood, have some gang affiliated issues that kind of drive that graffiti. But I don't know if it's COVID and, you know, lack of entertainment for folks because they have, you know, bored or what, but there's just been a huge increase where it's just not just in the past where, you know, it was more of an anomaly when a park would get hit with, you know, several items in a park. Now it's becoming really common that they hit every piece of play equipment that's in the park, every sign, every bench, trees, in some case that they're spray painting, that, you know, try to get every surface that might be available. So just to real quickly, you know, since we have seen such an uptick in graffiti, we have kind of started a program in as much as putting on our amenities, whether it's signs, whether it's the structures, whether it's things like that that are getting hit quite extensively. We went out for bid and have a contractor so that they're putting basically a repellent, a seal coat kind of anti-graffiti surface on those. So when they are hit, it's easy for that graffiti to be removed without having to actually replace the item, or the cleaning material itself. The old cleaning material would cause extensive damage because it, you know, it would fade the item, or it would, the surface itself would deteriorate because of the harsh chemicals. So we've tried to be proactive. It's more expensive to do that, but we're trying in the long run. It's less expensive than having to continually go in, repaint, readdress, replace, and all of those. So we've kind of modified that approach. We're happy in some of the locations that, again, that are continually being hit, that has helped us, but it's not a material that can be placed on every surface. I mean, clearly, you know, we're not putting it on trees. We're not putting it on things, you know, some of those things. So it can't be put on every surface, but it has helped us. So hopefully over time we'll see as we do more and more parks, and, you know, we've started with restrooms, in and out, interiors and exteriors, shelters, like I said, some of the other, you know, signage, some of those kinds of things, that we'll see in the long run that they'll, at least the damage won't be long-term kind of damage. But that, anyway, that's a preponderance of what these events are really graffiti driven.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And I didn't realize about the anti-graffiti option, so I appreciate that. Okay, this brings us on to new business. I had an item I wanted to pose to the group, so I'll start out. I was thinking kind of in the vein of what Keith was bringing up earlier about trying to get more, how we could have more say or just be more awareness of some of the topics. And one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is our relationship with City Council. And, you know, we are an advisory board to council, and I've been trying to find more ways that we can be in touch with them. I've reached out to council members. I've been in touch with them as I can on a personal level. But how it works now, when we go and give our annual report every year, I have to sign up as public comment, and I show up and I give public comment. It's sent as like an agenda item in their packet. But really, if you look at the creation of SPRAB, it talks about a joint meeting every year. And I think that is a big jump, but I wanted to propose basically 4 different things about us working with council that I was thinking I could write them up into a letter, bring it all to you next time. So that way there's no action item today, but just wanted to get some general feedback. And then next time we can talk about it and you all can tell me that it's a terrible idea, or we can vote to agree on it. But just to lay out kind of the 4 things I'm thinking that might really strengthen that relationship. One is, when we present our annual report, making that an actual agenda item for council once a year. So then when we present the annual report, they can also share some thoughts with us, or, you know, with the chair, whoever's presenting. And that way there's an opportunity for us to hear what council's interested in, so we can bring that back. Apologies on that, the dog there, it's the delivery person. 2 was, there's work sessions on topics that are pertinent to us occasionally, such as trees. I know there was one, I think back in 2020, and, we are invited to attend as a member of the public, just watching it or in the audience. And I feel like there could be a role for one representative SPRAB to be part of that work session as the advisory board, even if we're just kind of there and alongside staff. Just to talk about what we're hearing and what we're thinking about from the SPRAB side. Number 3 was the climate action plan, as that's going into effect right now. And there's the subcommittee starting up with council. There's a big section on natural resources. I think, as many of you know, I was the representative from SPRAB, and I think it'd be great for them to think about projects they can push to SPRAB for us to deliberate on and make recommendations on. And then 4 was just really opening up that channel of communication for more things like the park usage and planning subcommittee we had last year, where we were able to take a project that was recommended by Councilor Nordyke. And then we were able to create a subcommittee, talk through it, make recommendations that could then go back to council. So it really spreads out the work. So it's not just council doing everything, and gives us more ability to have input. So my thought, once again, is we propose this. I will organize my thoughts for you all, but I wanted to get some initial feedback on what people thought about that now. Yeah, Rick.
Yeah, in other similar type committees and boards that I've been on, underneath a higher level board, there's always been a liaison or representative that would sit in our meetings. Is it possible or feasible to have a city council member be present in this case, our Zoom meetings, so that they know what we're doing and they can relay to us what they're doing, and have that get a little bit closer relationship, so we could work together better. I don't know if that makes sense, but
it does. I mean, I think capacity is going to be one of the challenges that will be cited. They are volunteer, and I know that. And I don't want to just credit staff. I know staff try to do a really good job of making sure that there's communication between. But like you're saying, just having that face-to-face time. And I wonder if there could even be, like, as Gretchen's going to be joining us quarterly to talk about some of the unsheltered individual updates, if there could be someone from council joining us on a semi-regular basis, maybe quarterly or once a year, or twice a year or something. That kind of, I like that request of having someone join us, and that could be the mayor, council president, or someone designated on council, but just to have that two-way street of communication. Al?
I think that it would be, first of all, I don't know if there is an established mechanism now for communication with neighborhood associations and SPRAB, but it seems to me that we on occasion have had people coming to us from different neighborhood associations to address issues of concern to them, draw our attention to things. And that seems like a natural. And it would be reasonable, I would think, if we had some provision for structuring communication between this board and each neighborhood association on a regular enough basis so that it's consistent. Is there any provision for that? If not, maybe we could think about what could be done. I was approached by the West Salem Neighborhood Association when Mickey stepped down, because she had been communicating with them and they wanted somebody to pick that up. I don't know if you've been approached, Dylan, for West Salem, or if there's others for their neighborhood associations, but what's the status of that and what should be done, do you think?
I like that idea a lot. And I think that more ways that we can communicate with the neighborhood associations would be good.
What do others think about how that could be done, or should the invitation be extended to each one for them to try to send a representative of some sort, just as an informal communication conduit?
Al, I think that's worth discussion. I actually jotted down a very similar idea in the middle of this meeting, thinking that, staff talks about how they were going out to the neighborhood associations and generating public comment in that way. And I think that is a role that we could assist with through our board and having regular communications in there. I know the West Salem Neighborhood Association had a parks chair. In fact, I think Mickey was that individual. Might still be. I don't know if the other neighborhood associations do, but that might be a worthwhile thing to invite them to have a parks chair. and to have that individual be a part of this meeting, right? And as a particular conduit. So I think that is something that is worth exploring. I also think, Dylan, kind of back to your 4 points, those all sound great to me. I think that makes sense in kind of emphasizing and showing council our willingness and ability to engage and to more robustly fulfill our role as is outlined in the Salem Revised Code. And so I think that seems good. I think it'd be interesting to see how other advisory boards of city council operate in that manner. And I don't actually have any idea how many advisory boards there are for the city, right? But just thinking about, making sure or seeking some level of parity or, similar approach there, I think would make sense. But in terms of those 4, I think that those are comprehensive. They're all good. They're good issues. I fully agree that our annual reporting should not be part of the public comment period. We're an advisory board of council. There should be a little more effort on behalf of council directed to that. So I'm game for seeing a letter next time around.
Yes.
All right, and I am going to include what Rick suggested there in terms of requesting a liaison from council to join us. I think Al, the neighborhood association, that might be a separate, I don't know if that needs to be in this letter, but I think that's a separate thing we should discuss next time. So maybe we can all do a little bit of homework on that and come ready to discuss that of how we could, the simplest thing would be us just getting in sending an email out to all those folks on the parks chairs and or neighborhood association chairs and inviting them. But let's think through if there's another way for us to engage as well.
Well, also, we could engage with them and become involved with them. Now, looking at our board, most of you are from West Salem. But I live in South Salem. I could probably become involved. I think it's the Fay Wright neighborhood. In that area, but there are a lot of others that we could reach out to them and, or be involved, or attend their Zoom meetings or whatever. Of course, we're all, some of you are a lot busier than I am. I'm a recovering middle school teacher. I have a lot of time on my hands. But it's something that we could, they don't have to come to us. Maybe we could go to them a little bit too.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think they would welcome that. I think I mentioned last time some work on a bike project that I'm doing. And so I was meeting with the SCAN Neighborhood Association last night, and they were happy to hear just a little bit more about some of the work. And I think that would be a good opportunity for us just to join and say, we're here to listen, even if it's not our neighborhood association, if it's one adjacent, to say, we're on the Parks Board. We wanted to hear a little bit of their concerns. So I like that idea. All right, well, I will do some homework on that and send something out. Staff, I will make sure you all see that ahead of time so you can share any ideas or input from your perspective, and then we can talk about this more next time. Any other new business to bring up? All right. Well, with that, our next meeting is going to be June 9th. And just a reminder, there is going to be the council decisions on the bond over the next 2 weeks. So if you're following that process, mark your calendar for that. But otherwise, thank you all for a wonderful meeting. Keith, congratulations on vice chair, and appreciate all of you electing me to serve again as chair. And this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.